We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it! My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
And now, Reality Rants with Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Good morning, everybody. This is Reality Rants. I am Jason Bermas. It is brought to you by RedVoiceMedia.com. The second hour, always premium, over at RedVoiceMedia.com/Jason or /Uncensored. Find it both places. And you're probably going to want to go uncensored today because there are a plethora of videos that, once again, I will not be able to show on the first hour of the broadcast that we have on YouTube. If you joined me last night for what was supposed to be Mixed Martial Mindset, but really ended up being more of a breakdown of the Grammys and the Pfizer situation, and really it's beyond Pfizer. It is that we are a captured populace. We are now beholden to large companies that clearly do not have our best interests at heart, that want to be directly involved in not only our day-to-day lives, but our very biology. And no one seems to be calling them out on their unaccountability on a multitude of levels. So, you watched that video yesterday, and although I touched on the quote-unquote Satanism aspect of it and the ritualistic aspect of it, and I'm going to hint at that a little bit more today and what that actually means and what that actually is, we really focused on the Bernaysian tools, the very pretty Hollywood appearance of this program that gets people like my alter ego, Johnny Nonsense, to just sit there and applaud and want to be part of this thing. Okay. So we're still going to have a lot of the stuff that I didn't cover last night. I think we didn't go over about 7 or 8 more Pfizer commercials that we will watch during the broadcast. We went over to the uncensored end for the SNL sketch that I didn't hear about anywhere and literally is putting it in your face where, again, I want to be really careful just to not cue any key words, but the joke is that, let's just say you want to get sick and you can order test results that make you sick, and that way you can just get away from everybody, and it's a big joke. It's a big joke. And they even say it feels different now, doesn't it? Yeah, it feels really different because we're 3.5 years now down a very real nightmare that still, in many places in the world and in some parts of our life, there's no end in sight. None. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lead in with one of the reasons, and again, this is a story we covered on this show a couple weeks back. Whenever I see a mass shooting, Okay, whenever I see an incident where a parent kills their children, their whole family, and murder, suicide, male or female, the first thing that I begin to question is what, guys? What kind of pharmaceutical medications was this person on? That's number one. Numero uno. I don't ask if they've had a history of domestic abuse. You know why? Because the vast majority of people that even have a history of domestic abuse, when it's one of these things where it's like you kill everybody and then you try to kill yourself, that's not what that is. Usually the kids are not involved in that. Unless, again, you add that layer of these medications and psychotropic drugs that are advertised constantly on television, in magazines, while you're scrolling on all the little apps. They don't get banned on social media. They're a mega money machine. A mega money machine. Doesn't matter which one you talk about. Okay? And that's why, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try not to get emotional because it turns my stomach every time I have to talk about this. And then I have to look at pictures of the kids that got murdered by their mother. And this should be front page everywhere. This is what they should be harping on instead of that Murdaugh murder trial. And look, do I think it's a tragic event when a father allegedly kills his wife and his child? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Whoa, 100%. But in that case, it's they were a wealthy family, and his son had killed somebody else in an accident. He was disliked. It's something that can be on a true crime podcast. Ooh. Has some kind of a appeal. Yeah, is my audio low? I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying. I'll try to turn it up a little bit right there. I'm gonna have to reset my my audio codecs, apparently. So, yeah, audio is a little low. All right, well, that's a lot of you guys said that. Sorry. Jeez, we went 7 whole minutes with some low audio. That is my fault. Well, hopefully, I guess we'll have to do some tech stuff. It is Reality Rants here. So, let's look at this. So, a woman, 32 years old, gets diagnosed with postpartum depression. Now, look, I'm not saying that that it's easy and that medications should not be used in some cases when somebody has some type of depression or mental illness. I think that they should be used sparsely, and when they are used, they should be used in a very serious manner. In other words, there's some gravity to that. I don't think they should be, again, advertised on any sort of popular media, period. That's not where they belong if they're medicine, right? And especially if they're not day-to-day medicine, but they're medicine that needs to be prescribed by a physician. Okay? Okay, I'm glad that's better. So, let's just read this. What drugs was this woman killed her children, 3 children, strangled them to death, and then ended up trying to kill herself. And we're not going to play the audio, but I'm going to, I'm going to read this. This is what she was medicated with from October to January. This is 2 months. 2 months. Reddington says that between October and January, Clancy was prescribed a dozen medications. Zolpidem, which is sold under the brand name Ambien. Clonazepam, which is sold under the brand name Klonopin. Diazepam, which is sold under the brand name Valium. Fluoxetine, which is sold under the brand name Prozac. Lamotrigine, which is sold under the brand name Lamictal. Lorazepam, which is sold under the brand name Ativan. Mirtazapine, which is sold under the brand name Remeron, quetiapine fumarate, which is sold under the brand name Seroquel, and Trazodone. Now you look at those kids right there. Is anyone going to prison other than that mother for those kids' deaths? You know, best case scenario, sometime down the line, there'll be some kind of a new lawsuit against these companies, and there'll be money paid out and NDAs signed, and that's disgusting to me. That should disturb everybody. We are captured. We are a captured society. You know, just yesterday, to even flip it on its head, and who knows what kind of medications this person's on. But I was scrolling through my feed, and I happened across, let's just say, a sibling of somebody that I grew up with. You know, I know this person. I know this person's family. I've known this person since I was 12 years old. And I'll admit, definitely had some issues socially. And, you know, that family certainly had issues with their mental health at times. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to get crazy with it. I read that they're talking about like their 5th grade aged, you know, just out of being a toddler child, changing up their medications. And I'm like, what are you doing to your kid? Let your child be a child. All right, unless we're talking about some kind of physical allergic reactions, or we're talking about asthma medication, or, you know, there's a glucose issue, like real issue, not we have them on new medication because of their behavior. You know, first of all, I do believe, number one, genetically, although we are a representation of our lineage, of our parents in particular, but a lot generationally can be honed in there. I do believe that we are given a sentient consciousness, a uniqueness that also stems into that. All right? And that's all that is with your kid. That's what that is. And it may not always be comfortable, and it may not always be easy, but you can damn well be sure that it isn't even a last resort that I would put my child on some kind of psychotropic medication. That's insanity. You know, and that's what's crazy to me, because as a society, again, I know I got the grays and I'm a little bit older, and maybe some of the younger generation doesn't remember this, but what used to happen as parents, right, what you were encouraged to do societally, if something like this was going on, let's find an outlet for this kid. You know, if you had a physically aggressive kid that was getting in fights in school or getting in fights with others in the family, you try to perhaps get that energy out in karate or get them into wrestling, right? Something of a physical activity. If there was some kind of maybe feeling blue and depressed because there wasn't a social unit for that kid and they were quiet, but they were excelling at something, you know, else educationally, you would get them what? An instrument. You'd get them into some kind of a club. You know, back in the day, chess club, or it was really typing most of the time, or coding with computers, depending on how old you were. Things of that nature. We're just getting kids together, you know, on the old 486 to play some Doom. Right? And even, I mean, you had those things. And that's kind of how you had your outlet. And it wasn't supposed to be easy. But now we are constantly being pushed into this society where everything is easy. And we're going to take care of you. And the other thing I want to talk about Pfizer before I move on, and we'll come back to Pfizer and these commercials. Because, again, if you didn't see last night's broadcast, I think it's a really important one. And we went over a lot of the Bernaysian propaganda, period. But, I mean, it's still going on. I mean, I got a CNN ad that I might play before the Pfizer ads. And then this thing is globally, so it's not just Pfizer in the United States. No, it's Pfizer everywhere. Okay? And by that, Pfizer is in bed with CBS, Paramount, Viacom. It's all the same thing. I mean, they're these mega corporations. And I'm just going to say this. Just like I was telling you, it's a big joke to these guys. Big old joke. Okay? Big joke. With the SNL sketch. And even how these people act behind the scenes and what they think of you. I saw this, and it was something that I definitely thought we had to at least address. So as anybody knows, in a big production like the Grammys or anything, they rehearse. And obviously, CBS knows what they're going to be showing on television. All right? Now, you can see here that the little devil horn hat is on, and we got the little ritual thing going on, but everybody's in there. I mean, it's just crazy to me that you're just passing off what appears to be an overweight, middle-aged man that resembles a plumber as the new hot sex symbol Satan thing. Kind of, again, it's cartoon level, but these people know what they're doing, because a guy like this is going to jump on it because he wants his career to continue and flourish and to feed off all the depravity that comes with that. CBS loves the depravity. You can say that again. We are ready to worship. So again, is that cute? Is that funny? I don't know if that's cute or funny to me, personally. Because let's take it on its face. All right? Let's say you're a total atheist. You don't believe in any kind of spirituality. I mean, you're Big Bang all the way. Science. We love the science. Primordial ooze. Evolution of apes. The whole down the line main narrative. You don't even have a consciousness, really. From whence the ground you came, over and done. That's it. Now I'm a big believer in you get one shot at the title, and this is your run, at least on this planet. But I always talk about a spiritual aspect of this. Okay? But even if you don't believe that, think about it for a second. In all the TV shows, and all the movies, and all the fables, and everything you were essentially taught early on, especially in my age range or younger, or I'm sorry, older. Because younger, I'm not so sure anymore. There were good guys and there were bad guys. All right, on all fictitious stories. And the representation of bad were the devil and hell. Okay? Over time, that shifted somewhat. It's been parodied. For instance, it's my favorite musical of all time. South Park, bigger, longer, uncut, 1999, revolutionary. Satan has a huge role in it. And Satan's like a sympathetic character. But he's still the villain. He's still the villain. I mean, he's on the SS Manhandler. He's singing up there. He's in an abusive relationship with Saddam Hussein. There's a lot of hilarity. Later on, there's an episode where he takes on Man Bear Pig. And, the kids are basically surrounding him. It's very just like supposed to be taboo. And why is it supposed to be taboo? Because all of these things growing up were the representation of bad and evil. So again, even if you don't buy into any of it, just the fact that large media corporations and pharmaceutical corporations alike are just like, there it is. Hey, oh, how you like that? That's huge. I mean, you literally have a performance that CBS ends, after, you have your trans movement in there as well. Because Sam Smith, again, non-binary, he's not a he or a she. He's got men dressed up like women. Some of them may be post-operative transsexuals. Very possible through the whole thing. But it ends with them putting him down into hell after he's talking about doing unholy things. And it's brought to you by Pfizer. Brought to you by Pfizer. And again, the mainstream's going to love this because they love, at this point, just mocking people. They love the divisiveness. They knew this was going to be divisive, obviously. And you're just going to swallow it, right? You're supposed to think a company that comes on after that promotes that, is here to help. You know, for those that haven't seen it, maybe we should just play that last little bit, okay? So we will. We'll play that last little bit right here. And, you know, not a lot of the music behind, but I mean, literally, you know, and the guy at least singing. So you have the other, like, outer ritual demons that plant him down into hell. And then you got, like, again, the BDSM kind of devil thing. Everybody's draped in red and black. Hey, CBS presents the Grammys, brought to you by Pfizer. It's just a big laugh. Really. It's a bit, and then once again, you can't make this up. You know, they're out. Let's get ready. We're ready to worship. I mean, what are you worshiping? It's even the idea set, to me, is over the top. Okay. I'm going to transition a little bit. We're going to come back to those Pfizer commercials. More than likely be hitting a lot of those in the second hour because, again, there's only certain things you can still say on the YouTube platform. I will say this, if you just want to listen, but it's not as good unless you see visually. But, you know, you might want to listen. There's some nice piano music in all of them, and you can imagine what the messages are that get put out there. You can always listen for free over at the Info Warrior on Podbean, and that is always free every single day live. And then every day you get the premium broadcast from 2 weeks ago goes free over at redvoicemedia.com/Jason. Just scroll down, which is awesome that they do that. Remember, you can support me. It's $10 a month or it's $100 for the year. Again, redvoicemedia.com/Jason gets you in there. And then we're on Rockfin right now. We also put up a lot of the Making Sense of the Madness, and then the second hours from a couple weeks back over on Rockfin as well. Okay. I think this story is important because I'm seeing a new narrative being built around a lot of suspect incidents that involve power supplies in this country, okay, and power plants in this country. And then you have this global narrative that we're using too much power. At the same time, power is going up in price in a lot of places, and the power they want you to use is now being replaced and openly regulated through smart meters, and now what's being discussed with 15-minute cities. So the idea that out of nowhere, all of a sudden, instead of just the cyber attacks that we've been warned of, right, and this green ecosystem that we need to be a part of, and really green doesn't mean green, just like sustainability doesn't really mean sustainability. Just like your carbon footprint means, no, we want to regiment every aspect of your life, okay? Is that I was watching Rachel Maddow last night because, again, I torture myself. I watch everybody. And I'm not reading into one narrative. I want to hear what everybody has to say. I want to hear what the top stories are, what the spin is everywhere. And they were discussing this latest power plant attack that I hadn't seen, okay? And now that's apparently white supremacist neo-Nazis that are attacking power supplies so they can kick off a civil race war. The most absurd, obscene, ludicrous, mad idea that there would be individuals without some kind of federal or intelligence involvement provoking them to do so, that would be an idea. And I watched this thing, and they went all the way back to like 1983, and they started talking about the Turner Diaries, okay? And I got a queasy feeling in my stomach because I'm like, man, neo-Nazis and power plants is just like over the years we've been told that these domestic terrorists, these white supremacists, if you will, are going to be teaming up with Al-Qaeda to bring down the United States. So you have these perfect storms. You have these narratives being set. Again, think about that. White supremacy and neo-Nazis now want to knock out the power in the United States. What kind of hysteria is that? I mean, seriously, what kind of hysteria is that? So I'm going to play this clip, not of Rachel Maddow, because I couldn't find it. And it blows my mind. They're sitting there talking about white supremacy and domestic terrorists. And it's Rachel Maddow talking to like, a 30-something-year-old blonde woman, done up in full makeup. You have these two ultra-white women just being like, white supremacy, neo-Nazis, race war. Ooh. So we'll give it a little bit of flavor, because I saw the Mehdi Hassan guy had done the same exact story. And these people read from a script, and it's all race-based. Hey, I've got news for everyone. This is a global system they're bringing in. Okay? And they want every single part of you. Mind, body, and soul. In the next couple of clips, I'm going to very, very much demonstrate that. Okay? But first, what I want to do is I want to play this clip of Mehdi Hassan. And now it's the neo-Nazis are going to shut off our power to start a race war. This is the new narrative. I know it sounds cartoon level, but it's what they're bringing in.
Good evening from Washington, D.C. I'm Mehdi Hassan, sitting in for my good friend Chris Hayes. For years, terrorism was seen as a problem within Islam, a threat from Muslims, an issue that people who look like me, with names like mine, had to explain, condemn, and apologize for.
So that's the irony. Explain, condemn, and apologize for. Now, for some reason, he acts like that was wrong, and it was. And he's exploiting that. But he wants to do the same exact thing to white people. And we don't get into race here. Not much. Except for when it's being used and exploited like this. Because there's one race to this guy. It's the human damn race. All right? And it is absurd to think, whoever this is, American extremism, that power plant attacks are now racially motivated. But that's what this guy's going to tell you.
We had a war on terror. Yeah, Muslim terror. 9/11, obviously, and Al-Qaeda, and then ISIS. And yet the truth is that between 1994 and 2020, there were nearly 900 terrorist attacks and plots here in the United States, and the majority of them were perpetrated not by Muslims, but by right-wing terrorists.
So let's just stop. Those are absurd, made-up, inflated numbers from a broadened definition of quote-unquote terrorism brought to you, okay, by what? The Patriot Act, Homeland Security, a complicit media, fusion centers, local legislation. Do you really believe? All right, first of all, they go pre-9/11 here. I want to make that very clear. They go pre-9/11. There are intelligence aspects all over McVeigh. They invoked McVeigh, and I'm pretty sure that he'll invoke McVeigh just like Maddow did because it's part of the script, right? It's part of the ethos of this whole facade and narrative. Now, you talk about the 93 World Trade Center bombing, which they didn't stop, and it was an FBI asset, Ahmed Salam, that built the bomb under FBI and DEA supervision. That's not disputed. Look into it. Look into John Antisef. We've played it here on the program numerous times. We won't do it again. Watch Invisible Empire and New World Order Defined. Think about that number. Think about that number. Think about how many setups you've seen. We've covered them here, where it's the FBI on the inside, that's doing this. That's basically taking advantage of poor people that will do things for money and then rebranding it terrorism. And now it's right-wing terrorists. Right-wing, Mehdi Hassan.
And white supremacists. And that brings me to tonight's news of a new alleged far-right terror plot to, quote, completely destroy the city of Baltimore. It is a terrifying story that involves a neo-Nazi. Yes, a neo-Nazi accused of planning a terror attack in America in the year 2023.
You know, I talk about this a lot also. You know, the idea that there are neo-Nazis roaming around everywhere, under every bed and every closet, coming to get you, is the same idea that there's a transgender person everywhere, on every block, around every corner, in every neighborhood. I want you to think about this for a second. When you, again, and I've made this analogy about transgender people, when you go into an airport, into a crowded area, when you are in a, even in most of these are metropolitan or large city areas, when you're on a bus, when you're on a train, how many neo-Nazis do you see? Oh, Jason, they're hiding it. These neo-Nazis are undercover. Are they? Just like how many transgender people do you see? How many neo-Nazis are in your neighborhood? Are in your town, county, city, state? Where are they? Well, apparently the ones that exist are ready to blow up power plants and the infrastructure to take out Baltimore and attempt at a race war. It sounds absurd on its face.
His name is Brandon Russell. He is a 27-year-old Florida resident who was released from federal prison in August of 2021. In 2017, Russell was charged with and pleaded guilty to multiple counts of bomb making. That came after police discovered neo-Nazi paraphernalia, a framed photo of Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber, and explosive material in his home. At that time, Russell admitted to subscribing to National Socialist or Nazi beliefs and told officials that he had started his own local National Socialist group called the Atomwaffen.
Now, my question is, right out of the gates, is this kid a federal asset? Or is he just a dupe? Or is he just, I mean, he's got a framed picture of Timothy McVeigh? Like cartoon level. Cartoon cutout level. And then they're telling you they already knew that he was making bombs, but he's out on the streets. Yeah, okay. Can we get some thumbs up? Can we get 100 thumbs up over on YouTube? Rumble, that helps too. Get the comments outside of just the live chat, guys, and share this information with others. Let's continue with Mehdi Hassan.
According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Atomwaffen is a terroristic neo-Nazi organization with the main aim of ushering in the collapse of civilization, so a white ethno-state or whites-only utopia can be constructed in its wake.
You got a lot of people telling you about the white-only utopia. Seriously. I'm right now, I'm reflecting. I'm going back in time. And I'm trying to think how many people have approached me about a white utopia after some kind of a civil race war in this country, like actually approached me and said something. And I would say there's a possibility of maybe like 1 or 2 times while I was involved in the loose change thing and I was at a large event, and you would want to disrupt 9/11 truth with holograms and flat earth and bigots. And maybe you would have somebody coming in there talking about racial supremacy, et cetera, saying those things. But never, not one time in my entire life of 43 years have I been at a mall kiosk or a restaurant or in the grocery store and all of a sudden started having a conversation with somebody who was promoting the idea of a white utopia. It's Johnny Nonsense. It's over the top. It is cartoon level. Is there anybody in the crowd over here that can honestly say they have ever been approached by an individual talking like this was a reality in any way, shape, or form? Anyone?
Back in 2017, Russell and the Atomwaffen were planning an attack on Florida infrastructure, including power lines, as well as a nuclear power plant. That is, according to a fellow member of the group. And last year, less than a year after his release from prison, the FBI says that Russell started up similar plans again. Using an alias on an encrypted messaging app, Russell encouraged an FBI source to carry out attacks against critical infrastructure.
So again, we know that we've got an FBI source involved. We know that he was using encrypted message software. I keep telling people, it's not encrypted. I mean, it may be more encrypted than others, and perhaps your metadata isn't getting out there in some way. But these people literally, just on its face, have screen cap technology where they can already tell you every single keystroke that you've made. So in other words, every touch on your phone, every single one. All the photos you've taken for social media that you didn't use, all that stuff, doesn't matter. Your Signal, your Telegram, et cetera, et cetera. No, they got it. They got it. All right? So let's continue with this absurd farce.
He specifically encouraged the source to attack electrical substations and provided guidance on how to cause maximum damage, as well as telling him to read a white supremacist publication that provided instructions on how to attack critical infrastructure. In January, Russell asked the FBI source to collaborate with a Maryland-based woman to carry out the attacks. That woman then made contact with the source, telling him that she's a felon and asking him to purchase a rifle for her. Near the end of January, in a phone call, she listed the 5 substations she planned to target and described how there was a ring around Baltimore, and if they hit a number of them all in the same day, they would completely destroy this whole city.
So, you know what? Let's look at this on its face. So far, I've got 2 people that are kind of involved in this. Some felon woman and some Florida whatever. And I don't know if meth is involved, right? I don't know if these people are crackheads. I have no clue. But it seems from the get-go that there's no real threat. This person can't even purchase a rifle. They're taking down the substations. They're taking down the nuclear plants. What kind of fantasy land are we living in here? We're living in the Mehdi Hassan fantasy land. That's the one.
FBI officials identified this Maryland woman as 34-year-old Sarah Clendaniel and provided this photo of her clad in tactical gear with a swastika on her chest, armed with multiple weapons too.
You know what? So weird. They'll talk about swastikas on this woman's chest. But when you see that kind of symbolism and others like it, I don't know, in a place far yonder, say Ukraine, completely ignored by this network. Completely ignored.
They also obtained a document they believe to be written by her referencing the Unabomber and Hitler.
Oh, I mean, they got the whole roundup. Unabomber, Hitler, McVeigh, top notch. I mean, they'd probably throw Satan in there, but he's getting a revamp. He's backed by CBS, Viacom, and Pfizer now. So we you know, if there was any of that devil stuff, we'll forget about it. We're not going to report on it. We're just going to go with Hitler, McVeigh, I mean, and the Unabomber.
Today, federal officials announced that they had arrested both Clendaniel and Russell, who they called racially or ethnically motivated extremists.
As alleged in the complaint, Sarah Beth Clendaniel and Brandon Russell conspired to inflict maximum harm on the power grid, a key component of our critical infrastructure. The accused were not just talking, but taking steps to fulfill their threats and further their extremist goals.
How much, I mean, when it comes out later on, how much do you want to bet that it was the FBI sources inside, the informants inside, that came up with the idea to hit the power plants. Do you think that this, what was it, they say he's 24 years old, and the felon girl in the tactical skull gear were like, this is it, we know what to do? Doubtful.
Russell provided instructions and location information. He described attacking the power transformers as the greatest thing somebody can do. In her own words, Clendaniel said she was determined to do this. She added, it would lay this city to waste.
Shocking stuff. Russell and Clendaniel.
Shocking stuff. A couple of mid-20s nobodies that had no way to carry out their plans, that couldn't even get a rifle. Shocking stuff. What? No. Again, it's shocking to me that this network, have they covered the story we talked about of the woman killing her 3 children on 12 different types of medication? Is that anywhere? That's shocking. Because it's not just happening, once a year. That's wild.
They were both charged with conspiracy to damage an energy facility and could face 20 years in prison if they are convicted. The FBI says that the pair acted alone, but this is part of a worrying trend as physical threats to the U.S. power grid jumped 77% last year to an all-time high. Now, I think it is important to note that the right has been demonizing the majority black city of Baltimore for a long time.
News to me. News to me. Again, the right. This is Red Voice Media. We're not about right or left. We're about right and wrong. Okay, but I don't know. And you want to know? When I think Baltimore, you want to know my last conversation about Baltimore? All right. My last conversation about Baltimore was in regards to the new 30 for 30 ESPN documentary that I was commenting. It's the Bad Boys of Baltimore. That I thought, first of all, I don't really watch football, and there's a lot of sports that I don't watch that I actually like watching the documentary films. As a documentary filmmaker, as somebody who's just kind of also still into pop culture, behind the scenes, I always find that stuff fascinating. And I was actually discussing how I really like the way that it was shot. These interviews are kind of close up, and you're looking down into a camera, and it's only almost like a 45-degree, a little bit wide angle. Neat. That's what I'm talking about via Baltimore. Nobody jumped into my conversation from there on the right wing and tried to demonize it. All right? If you want to talk about cities that the conservatives or the right wing are talking about, and they should be talking about, because it shouldn't just be, it's not just the right wing, by the way, it's people that live there, even the left wing. Those cities would include Chicago and San Francisco. Baltimore's not one for discussion. If I'm going to go way back into pop culture again, what else reminds me of Baltimore other than the Orioles and baseball and Cal Ripken? It would have to be Rock. And not The Rock, but there was an old show which actually happened to be a black family that I used to watch on Fox called Rock. I think he was a garbage man, and he wasn't treated like the idiot. He had some respect in the home. Novel times. That's what I think of when I think Baltimore. Now, at the same time, am I culturally aware that if I'm in a rough neighborhood in Baltimore, maybe I want to be careful? Yeah, but if I'm in a rough neighborhood in any metropolitan city, whether it's D.C. or Detroit or Philadelphia or New York, I could continue. Heads up. But again, this narrative, racial, right wing, white. And at the same time, we should be worried as a society that something could happen to our power grid, and they could blame it on a couple kids like this. Okay? So let's continue on.
We've heard it from the leader of the Republican Party and from the most popular host on their propaganda TV channel.
You look at our inner cities. Our inner cities are a horrible mess. I mean, I watched Baltimore. I have many, many friends in Baltimore. We're just talking about Baltimore. Look at what a disaster Baltimore is.
Whatever you do, don't go to Baltimore. It's one of the worst places in the Western Hemisphere. It's a little bit of Haiti in the mid-Atlantic.
And that brings me to the more important point.
So again, Tucker saying that's the Tuck, and certainly allowed to have that opinion. So you took Tucker and President Trump. And again, I think you're allowed to be critical of these cities, especially when they have... Listen, when I walk through some of these cities, it's not like walking through them 10, 15 years ago. And it's... Let me lay it down like this. There's almost a legend surrounding how crazy New York was in the 70s and the 80s. And being a little kid in the mid to late 80s, I do remember New York being wild. Wild. But then, later on, in the 90s and especially into the 2000s, I saw a vast change. Very visual. And I'm never going to be a guy that holds water for Giuliani. But there was a big difference. There's a big change. Okay? And I've been to some of these cities at their best, and now some of them are literally at their worst. One of the measurements when I'm on the road and I'm staying in a region, in a city, or a suburban area outside of a city is, for instance, that I was just in Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville, pretty all right. I haven't had a negative view of what's going on in Nashville. Pretty well put together. When you start to see things degrade and fall apart, you can kind of measure it by how many people are in medians begging for money with big signs. That's huge. Obviously, the cleanliness of the downtown area. And then when you're really, get into the bad parts, you're talking about a homeless population. Right? Like, when I'm in D.C., it's a given to me, if I'm walking around for any decent amount of time, an hour or two, I'm going to see some kind of a homeless enclave, which is very sad. You're certainly going to see individuals in benches and park areas that have set up shop. That's a given. And that's one of the things that makes me not love D.C. as a place. Don't love the fact that they've kept the totalitarian wall around the Capitol, by the way, that you're no longer allowed to visit. I think the State of the Union's coming up. Just fence it off, wall it off. We're a third world country now because the white supremacists apparently are going to turn off the power, according to Mehdi Hassan. I mean, come on. Let's continue. Let's wrap this one up.
The modern Republican Party is in denial about the threat from right-wing and white supremacist terrorism. Tucker Carlson has called white supremacy, quote, a hoax. After a white nationalist killed 51 people at 2 mosques in New Zealand in 2019, Donald Trump downplayed the problem, claiming it was just a small group of people. And, of course, we cannot forget Charlottesville in
Yeah, a guy right there who interviewed me, I think, 6 to 9 months before that, the crying Nazi, who really started getting into the racist aspects of all this stuff because allegedly his girlfriend left him for a black man, and then he started to hit the weights. This is a guy that was just like posing as kind of like a libertarian, and you got a bunch of losers with tiki torches. This is it. These guys, that guy, that's the boogeyman. It's a joke. It's a bad joke. Okay? It's a bad joke.
2017, when neo-Nazis chanted, "Jews will not replace us," and other Nazi slogans. And this was the then president's reaction.
You had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent.
So, once again, he's discussing the next day. He had already spoken out against the white supremacists, but they keep repeating this lie. All right? Period. This lie that somehow Trump endorses white supremacy. Oh, and look, again, not holding water for Donald Trump, but I remember watching that in full in 2017, and then what the media played up And it was a total inversion of reality. A total inversion of reality. You know, because we got our last 10 minutes, I do have this important clip of Claire Daly talking about freeing Julian Assange. And I think it's important to play it on this end because we need a free press. We need somebody to do the document dumps. What we've got right now with the Muskernuts and others, that's not good enough. Okay? Especially with Twitter. You know, dump all the files. Dump all the files. Stop prosecuting journalists. Under the Trump administration, they continued the prosecution of Julian Assange. Something that we have to keep in mind. So with that being said, let's go to this clip.
I'd just like to maybe start by thanking Sabrina in particular and Cinque Stelle for spearheading this event, which is one of a number of events around the case of Julian. This one centred on the Sakharov Prize, and it's so good to see so many representatives from the political groups. It is really very important, and all are very welcome. I want to start by making the point that 12 years ago, in June of 2010, Julian was in the same building as we are now. And he was here to speak about his work on WikiLeaks and the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative at a conference hosted by ALDE, which is now the Renew Group in the European Parliament. And during the time when he was here, as part of his speech, he observed that he had walked past the Sakharov Prize, dedicated and named after Andrei Sakharov. Now, Sakharov was, of course, a nuclear physicist who was instrumental in the Soviet Union achieving thermonuclear weapons, and much like his counterpart, Robert Oppenheimer, in the US, he was profoundly changed by the moral and political gravity of his inventions and the desperate implications of nuclear war, and became absolutely convinced of the need for peace, and dedicated the rest of his life to peace activism. That made him a dissident in the Soviet Union, resulting in his persecution. And the European Parliament every year gives a prize in his name for freedom of thought. And I just want to read out some of the remarks that Assange made 12 years ago in a meeting room very much like this one. And he pointed out that Sakharov and many others are the victims of what he called totalitarian in Russia. But, he said, it's not just Russia. And he went on to say, and it's quite prophetic and scary when you hear these words now, 12 years on, he said, we should understand where Andrei Sakharov came from in an ideological sense and why he is there. Of course, the man was a genuine hero. However, during the Cold War, there was an uneasy alliance between liberals and war hawks, between liberals trying to keep the best values of the European Enlightenment, between the press, who wanted liberation for their own domestic affairs, and between those who wanted a moral stick to beat the Soviet Union. He said that produced, in an ideological and political sense, the poster of Andrei Sakharov in this very building. He went on to say, that uneasy alliance is now gone. This is 12 years ago. The alliance between liberals and conservatives to push freedom of expression is gone, and that's why all around the world in different ways it's being wound back, because authoritarianism, whether it's institutional or whether it's state-based, is not a friend of freedom of expression. It's inherently opposed to it. And so now we have a fight on our hands. And he was absolutely right. We had a fight in our hands, because the threats to freedom of expression that he identified in 2010 have only become more profound in the intervening years. We are again in the teeth of a desperate global conflict between geopolitical power blocs, much like the Cold War. And much like the Cold War, our current situation is at risk of escalating into a global war, really, in which Sakharov and Oppenheimer's weapons might actually even be finally unleashed. So working for peace is more important now than it ever was. But unlike the Cold War, as Julian said, the free alliance of liberals and conservatives have gone. We've lost our way. Liberals are just as likely now to demand censorship of those who think differently. They're very good at protecting the plight of foreign dissidents, but are quite happy to dismiss dissent at home as disinformation. So freedom of speech is under attack in Russia for sure, but it's also under attack here in the European Union. And defending that, no one exemplifies that more than Julian Assange. Like Sakharov, Julian Assange was also a physicist in a past life. He was a student at the School of Physics in Melbourne University. Like Sakharov, he's a dissident in his own hemisphere. But unlike Sakharov, the invention that Assange gave to the world is not a weapon of war. It was a massive weapon of peace. WikiLeaks, his life's work, was meticulously engineered to defend the fundamental principles of journalism in holding power to account. He built WikiLeaks at a time when the traditional institutions of journalism were spectacularly failing to hold Western governments to account, to restrain the lies that had started the war in Iraq. And as Assange famously said, if wars can be started by lies, then peace can be started by the truth. And WikiLeaks almost immediately put to the test, exposing the United States and its allies' role in Afghanistan and Iraq. He didn't flinch at that test. He upheld the central responsibility of a journalist. He published without fear or favour and aimed to hold those in power to account. And it is for that and nothing else that he is being persecuted at the moment, in plain sight by the United States government. What was unthinkable 12 years ago, when The Guardian, Der Spiegel, the New York Times, everybody was publishing WikiLeaks. The Aldi Group were hosting him and feting him here as a hero. And look at the situation now, 12 years on. As Stella said, this is not just a case about freedom of expression in the United States or in Europe. It's a global case. The effects of WikiLeaks' work were not just felt in Europe or North America, but genuinely, absolutely everywhere. From Ireland to Haiti to Bulgaria, Ecuador, Brazil, Afghanistan, Tunisia, Egypt, every country that had a US embassy or a US base. So if the US can charge a journalist anywhere in the world with espionage and use extradition law to grab them, that establishes universal jurisdiction. It is a direct assault on the ability of ordinary people the whole world over to organise together, to seek justice and to work and forge for peace and mutual respect and cooperation that is so desperately needed in our time. So we do have, as we leave here and as we assemble here, a grave responsibility to the world and to future generations to give everything that we have for Assange's freedom. And in light of all that, it's totally right that he is a candidate for the Sakharov Prize. He's shown, more than many of the beneficiaries of it, I'd have to be honest, but that's a separate matter, exemplary adherence to the principle of freedom of thought. He's made an immense contribution to the defence of human rights and the cause of peace, and his suffering, as has been so heartbreakingly outlined, for that stance. No outcome would be better than giving him a prize. It could really put things on centre stage, and I really urge everybody to get behind it, but not just that, but all of the activities in the coming weeks to save Julian's life, to defend his legacy, and actually to save freedom of thought and expression in the European Union and the world.
I mean, spot on. Spot on. I'm sorry about the music that they played in the middle of the clip. I didn't see the clip anywhere else. I didn't, usually I stop those clips, but I mean, from the fact that she took it from a historical perspective of nuclear warfare. And we often talk about that age, the Manhattan Project, post-World War II, right, born classified, into Assange and why he's so important and how freedom of speech is now full-blown under attack globally, along with Assange himself. So important. Had to be said. Nailed it. Nailed it. And really, I care less about the awards. The real outcome is to ensure that this person is not extradited to the United States in a show trial that will put the final nail in the coffin of exposing monsters, no matter how egregious, disturbing, disgusting, destructive their actions. Big issues. Okay. I've got so many other clips on the side. We are going to be highlighting some of the Pfizer clips in particular that I did not get to last night. If you were watching last night and you want to come over, remember you can listen to everything over at the InfoWarrior Podbean. But I'm going to tell the producer to clock it over to the premium, redvoicemedia.com/Jason, as I say goodbye one at a time to each of you. Rockfin, I love you guys. You're the bomb diggity. And by the way, Rockfin and Rumble got the uncensored version of last night's broadcast. If you were watching on YouTube, we had to cut it short before we went to the SNL parody. We'll see you later. Twitter, you know the drill. We'll use you, but I don't know. Should I buy a blue check mark Twitter? That's a good question. I haven't bought one yet. Maybe we do it. Rumble, thanks for being there. We need an alternative.